This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Monday, the 5th day of June. Thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Coming up today, Joe Concha, our media critic and friend from Fox News, formerly of The Hill. He's got a new gig now. But anyway, wanted to get his reaction to all things media over the weekend. Chuck Todd at Meet the Press, ladies and gentlemen. A moment of silence, please. Chuck Todd of Meet the Press just announced he'll be leaving his venerable post and MSNBC, apparently. So I wanted to get Joe's reaction to that. Nycki Hayley had a town hall last night on CNN. You Nycki Hayley fans, we're going to get into that. I'll ask him, has Nycki Hayley figured out a way to talk about abortion for Republicans? Is she perhaps a role model for how to talk about it when it comes up with members of the media? I'll ask Joe about that. I got some insight into the Ron DeSantis campaign this weekend, I think. It may not be that profound, but I think I was on to something a couple of weeks ago when I asked you how Trump and DeSantis would differentiate themselves, and are we seeing that in one specific way? I'll get into that and explain what I heard. I think you'll find it interesting. Also, the LGBTQIA+, I can't remember all the letters, it's Pride Month, and I had an interesting exchange personally, but also it's just, I'm noticing it, and I know you are too, that this particular Pride Month is more aggressive than previous months. And what does that mean exactly? What are we watching? We'll get into that coming up. But first, let me tell you about the guy that makes this show possible each and every day, John Ruhlman, the guy that wants to save you on health insurance costs. Do you buy your own health insurance? If you do, and you're spending way too much a month, and we're spending way too much a month on everything these days, inflation is through the roof, one of the fastest, easiest ways to save you money is if you call John and tell him what you're buying in terms of your own private health insurance every month. I bet you he will save you at least 30 to 60% on what you're paying at present to insure you. If you're a small business owner, your employees, if you're a senior on a fixed income and you buy a supplemental plan, I bet you he'll save you money. If you're a family, you're just buying it for you, your spouse, your kids, let John crunch some numbers. He's got 80 different private health insurers across the country that he knows. He will find the best plan for you. Never will you get substandard coverage. In fact, most of the time when he talks to people, he finds out that they don't know that their coverage is not great, and that if, in fact, they get hospitalized or something, you know, they have corner-cutting insurance because they don't necessarily know exactly what their coverage involves. And so if you are, in fact, one of these people who doesn't actually know what your insurance covers, John can help you. John wants to talk to you, and it's just going to take 2 minutes to kind of go through your insurance, and he will tell you if, in fact, it's better or worse. If it's good, if it's the cheapest that's available, he'll leave you alone. It's not going to waste your time. It's always going to save you money, and the insurance will always be solid. Now, go to chrisstigall.com if you want to watch my video conversation with John so you can have a better sense of who he is, if that'd make you feel better before calling him. But I know you're going to love him. His care department, they're tremendous. They'll hold your hand through the whole thing so you don't have to navigate the bureaucracy yourself. 877-410-4321, 877-410-4321, or usmedicalplan.com. Twitter over the weekend, I was paying attention to this. Matt Walsh has this movie called What is a Woman? We interviewed him about that when it came out, I don't know, what was that, over a year ago? And I'm still very conflicted about what's going on over at Twitter. I mean, I don't know how one can probably police this entirely, although there's another part of me that feels like it's easily policed if this is your policy. I just don't know what to think about this. The Daily Wire people, Ben Shapiro's outfit, Jeremy Boring, Matt Walsh, among others. Matt made this movie under their Daily Wire banner, flagship. Great film, went crazy, lots of downloads. They partner with Twitter, they announced a few weeks ago, and then the Daily Wire decides they're going to mass distribute on Twitter for all to watch for free this new film called, well, it's not new anymore, but it's called What is a Woman? If you haven't seen it yet, I do recommend it. Matt Walsh explores this theme of transgenderism in a really, really interesting way, and he presses people who firmly believe in it like a religion. He presses them on it and makes fools of them. I mean, it really makes the movement look as mentally defunct as they are. Anyway, it's a very powerful and devastating film to the left. They don't want it seen. And the people at Daily Wire partner with Twitter, and they announced that their first big initiative is they're going to let it be seen site-wide. Then all of a sudden, Jeremy Boring, who runs the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro, goes on Twitter and he says, hey, I don't know what's up, and I don't know why, but all of a sudden, we've been told that we are in violation's not the word, but reviewing their plans to post What is a Woman site-wide for all to see on Twitter. The film has been flagged, and it was indicated that while it would be allowed to be posted, they were going to implement what they call, and I'd never heard of this over at Twitter until this film was about to be posted. They call it speech, not reach. Clever new Orwellian term. This came from inside Twitter's ranks, and this came just in the last week. Some people told the Daily Wire people, this violates some of our this and that, and as such, we're going to implement speech, not reach, meaning post it, but nobody can see it. It's shadow banning is another term for it. Again, I know that Twitter is not something most people use, so I don't mean to go too down the rabbit hole on Twitter, but it's relevant in that Elon Musk owns Twitter, and Elon's entire MO was to open this thing up so that all could speak and no one would be censored, and that would come to an end. Look, I know for a fact, it's just beyond a shadow of a doubt, that accounts like mine, little accounts like mine by comparison, are shadow banned. There is no doubt. You can see it. When Elon bought this thing, one of the things he did that was interesting was actually allows you to see how many other people actually see your post. When you post something, you can actually see other people who have seen it. That doesn't mean necessarily shared it or liked it or interacted with it in any way, but people that have actually physically seen it. And, you know, when you see that, I don't know, my account's been floating at literally 2 years, 50,000, and hasn't moved a nickel. Not one. 50,000 people. So when you post something or share something or write something and you tweet it out to 50,000 people and 2 or 3 people see it, I mean, that doesn't even make sense. Like, you're not even trying to mask the fact that, okay, it's clear an account like mine has been flagged. And I'm not saying it happened yesterday. I'm just saying years ago, whenever it was when they threw Trump off, they made it a policy. They started flagging anyone. I don't just mean me. I'm not saying they went after me exclusively. I think this has happened to, Emerald, our friend Emerald Robinson says that still happens. She has hundreds of thousands of followers. So the thing is, people are posting on this site and they're still not being seen every day, even though Elon owns it now. Well, sure enough, Jeremy Boring and the Daily Wire people start saying, hey, we wanted to show What is a Woman on Twitter and nobody can see it. What's the deal? Now, Daily Wire and Jeremy and Ben, they have millions of followers. So that couldn't be ignored. Elon saw it, got involved, said, I don't know what this is about, but let me look into it. Not only does he look into it, he watches the film for the first time. This just happened over the last 72 hours. And he says this is one of the most important films you're ever going to see. I want to make sure everybody sees it. And then he pins it. And again, for those of you that don't know what that means, that basically means this is the most prominent thing on your account. He pins it to the top of his account, Fast Eddie. Elon Musk took What is a Woman and pinned it. I can't remember how many tens of millions or hundreds of millions of followers he has. But he has pinned this film to the top of his account for everyone that follows him to see. The guy that owns Twitter now. And he says, 1,000 apologies. I don't know how this happened, but I want everyone to see this film. It's important. Now, that's great for the Daily Wire people. And I'm thrilled that it happened. And it's really impressive that Elon injected himself and got involved. But here I see this story today. I wind up all that to say this. Someone named Linda Yaccarino is expected to take over as chief executive officer of Twitter today. Now, who is she? Well, she's from NBC Universal. Now, we know a thing or two about NBC Universal in Philadelphia. That's Comcast, ladies and gentlemen. And we know the politics of Comcast, do we not?
Pretty well.
Yeah. Joe Benarock is taking a senior business operations role at the media company. According to a memo Benarock sent to NBC Universal, Benarock has served as Executive Vice President of Communications, Global Advertising, and Partnerships at NBC Universal, where Yaccarino for years ran the media company's ad sales operation. He has been one of her most trusted advisors. All right, so she ran ad sales. He was Vice President of Communications. So, clearly she's being brought in as the revenue generator. That's typically less political. Typically. But it's the fact that she brought this little toady with her. The head of communications. Now, does that make, from NBC Universal, Comcast, does it make you feel better or worse about the free speech on Twitter that this ad wizard from NBC Universal is coming on and bringing her little toady, the vice president of communications from NBC Universal? Does that mean operations will improve in terms of free speech at Twitter, or no, you think?
I wouldn't think so.
Now, I mean, you've been in sales.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think somebody like this Linda Yaccarino is going to come in and, hey, Elon, if we're going to sell this thing, you can't be pinning what is a woman to the top of your account. I mean, if you want us to start getting the Fords and the Chryslers and I can almost hear the conversation because I've been in a few of them just in my little sphere, never mind Twitter. I can imagine, I don't know, I maybe I'm wrong, but what bothers me is that there were people inside Twitter that told the Daily Wire, that is not a small account, that is not a small presence out there. They told them, hey, we don't approve of what this film's doing exactly, so we're going to let you post it, but just so you know, nobody's going to be able to see it. Told them that. Just flatly told them. These are people that work for Elon Musk right now. Again, Elon got involved and fixed it, but I don't know. I don't know. Did I tell you this on Friday that I got to ask you this because you're a good Catholic in there, and you weren't here. I don't think, Fast Eddie, when this popped. Speaking of Twitter, did you see the University of Notre Dame kicked off Pride Week last week on their Twitter account? They wrote, "Happy Pride Month. We celebrate all LGBTQ identities and reaffirm our commitment to being a welcoming, safe, and supportive place for all members of the Notre Dame family. We see you. We're glad you're here. You're an important member of our community." Now, I could have sworn this Pope has been pretty clear on this issue, has he not?
He has, yeah.
What's he said? Because you're Catholic, so I don't want to misremember or I don't want to paraphrase this. Where's he come down on this?
I think most recently he said that, obviously the church will not recognize homosexuality, like a marriage between, two people of the same gender.
Yeah. We celebrate LGBTQ identity. Now, look, reaffirmed to be welcoming, safe, and supportive for all members of the family of Notre Dame. Okay. We see you. We're glad you're here. You're an important member of our community. Okay. Fine with all that. We celebrate all LGBTQ plus identities, Fast Eddie. Notre Dame celebrates and reaffirms their commitment to all identities, LGBTQIA plus. It doesn't square with the Pope, does it?
I can't. It absolutely can't.
I know it doesn't square with Scripture, but long ago, academe stopped talking about Scripture, even at Notre Dame, so... But that's very interesting. I got this story from The Hill today, speaking of LGBTQ, how Biden has navigated issues as a Catholic president. Joe Biden, only the second Catholic president in history. By the way, does that even register with you? Again, not a man. I'm not a Catholic, so because you are, I have to ask. Are you aware that do you think about him much in terms of being a Catholic since you are? Does that connect with you in any way?
Not in the least.
Why?
Not at all. Because he's an immoral man. He's never really been a person to look up to. He's never really been an important figure. And he has never really represented the faith that well, like as a Catholic. I mean, he's not someone I'd look to say, you know who a model Catholic is? Joe Biden. He's never registered with me that way, ever.
Sidebar. As Pride Month kicked off, one of the fairly newly elected school board members in my community, you've probably seen this meme going around. That's the worst part of it. It's not only kind of like hateful and angry and nasty, it's also not original. She posts something that says, Happy Pride Month to all the homophobes. I hope you have a very uncomfortable month. You seen that one floating around out there, Fast Eddie?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Happy Pride Month. I hope you have a very uncomfortable month to all you homophobes, or something like that, it says. Now, that is a member of the school board in my community who posted that on a community site. It wasn't even on her own site. It was, and even if she had posted it on her own site, it still would have been provocative, but whatever, free speech, and it's her site. She posted this on a community website for all to see. Now, since then, there have been 3 new Christians, 2 of whom are from my church, elected to the school board. And I saw one of them yesterday, and I sat there in church Christine was she was seething over this. And she wanted to, fire off an email right away. And I said, let's wait to see a couple of the members of the school board at church on Sunday. And I was just curious if it would come up or if anybody. And I heard another woman approach one of these school board members in my Sunday school class yesterday. I heard it over my shoulder. I wasn't going to bring it up because we're at church, we're at Sunday school. I'm not going to bring it up. Newly elected school board member, right? And I whip around to him and I go, you see this? This? I pointed him and I go, I just want you to know that when you, and I won't say he's, how do I put this? He's not, he's not us. Politically speaking, he's not us. For instance, he's not exactly pro-school choice. He's one of these guys, he comes from public education, so he's one of these guys that, be true to your school, rah, 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 and our school should be the only thing going in the community, and we shouldn't want to talk about anything else. Now, that's not inherently bad, but I would prefer a tone of, look, if our school's not working for you or we're not getting it done, you should have options. That would be my preferred. So I wanted to give you a little background into who this particular guy is. So I've not really engaged with him a lot. He just won election, going to be on the school board for 2 years. But again, go to church with him, nice guy. So I turn around after I hear him engage in this conversation. I point in his face and I said, this right here, this is what we're talking about. This is what you need to understand. This is what gets people ticked off. And he looks, half afraid. And I realize I probably look a little menacing, so I pulled my finger down. And I said, this is provocation. Do you understand that? You understand this is not conservative bigots marching in the street, hey-haying and ho-hoing. We're minding our own business. And one of your colleagues decides to post a provocative LGBTQIA plus name-calling, chest-poking post on a community site. And we as Christians are supposed to do what? We're supposed to react to that how? Exactly. And isn't that always the great game they play? And then they always like to remind us, I thought you were a Christian. You're supposed to, turn the other cheek, or this is it. And actually, it's funny. It turned out totally coincidentally, my preacher ended up preaching on this and how to respond to people who hate you and despise you. It is biblical. Nothing new. But it's a provocation. And I'm noticing this year, unlike any other before, this LGBTQ thing, it's downright provocative. And I don't think it comes from gays and lesbians, to be perfectly clear with you. This is driven by that Marxist transgenderism stuff, which is an entirely different... I have many acquaintances and relatives who are gay. You know, a few who have married, same-sex marriages and things like that. Lovely people, fine people. I've been to dinner, have them at the house, celebrate holidays with them. You know, whatever. They know where we are. I know where they are. Bygones. We love one another. We're friendly to one another. I've never known gays and lesbians to behave as aggressively and as provocatively as we're seeing now. Have you noticed it this year in particular?
I've absolutely noticed it because, Chris, what you just said is you're not a homophobe, as that school board member charged.
That's right. But saying that is like saying I'm not a racist, right? Because they throw that around, and then how do you prove that? How can you ever disprove something like that? You can't. That's the game. So if you raise issue with it, if you say, I'd rather not the pride banner be hanging on my hospital or something. Well, why? What are you, a bigot? You a homophobe? No, I just feel like, can we not have any neutral ground where we're not discussing this isn't being shoved in our face? And of course, we've seen what's going on with everything from Bud Light to Target to Kohl's. I mean, they're putting it on baby onesies now. So again, poking, provocation, and we're supposed to shut up, not notice it, not react to it. And if we do, we're homophobes. So I had to laugh when I saw this headline, how Biden has navigated LGBTQ issues as a Catholic president, as if his Catholicism has given him pause one moment. Look at who he hired as the number 2 person in public health. That reprobate who's pretends to be an admiral and a woman. Dr. Rachel Admiral Levine, neither an admiral nor a Rachel. Much like his handling of abortion issues before it erupted when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Biden can appear to be uncomfortable at times with matters that contradict his faith. That's right. The Biden family, pious and holy and reverent. When you think good Catholics, the first people that pop in your mind are the Bidens, aren't they? Advocates say the LGBTQ issue is one the president can't ignore, despite looking at it through the complex lens of the church. Do you think he gives a single solitary moment's thought about the church or his faith or Christianity or what Scripture has to say about any of it? Sincerely.
Not in the least, ever.
Why do you think they're even writing this? Why would they be reminding people? You know what? Call me crazy, but this is in the Hill. If I didn't know any better, this would be a way the Hill is reminding people that already don't like him why he's an old fossil and a relic from long ago that the Democrats ought to purge from their ranks. This is not, for leftists who read the Hill, this is an unwelcome reminder that he has some ties to an era of faith and morality that they don't tolerate, and they don't want, and they don't welcome, and they call phobic. They don't want any reference to Scripture or the Bible or Catholicism. So, in one sense, it's a laugher that Joe Biden cares a whit or thinks at all about his faith when it comes to these issues. But on another plane, you kind of read it and you think to yourself, this might be yet another dagger in the heart of the old man. He's frail, he's feeble, he's bumbling. Most Democrats don't want him to run again. They don't support him as it is. This could be a tipping point kind of a thing. Advocates say the LGBTQ issue is one the president can't ignore. Marianne Duddy Burke, executive director of Dignity USA, a spiritual support and advocacy group for LGBTQIA plus Catholics, says, I would love to see President Biden really make one of his folksy speeches in which he talks about These are the people who are just trying to live their lives, and we need to learn to trust that they're doing the best they can, their families are doing the best they can, and support them. Although she said she'd like to see Biden act more on the issue, she also acknowledged his work in the community at large. I've seen that in the advocacy, the understanding that the queer youth have a lot of issues. Whether it is suicide support help or with foster care, addressing homelessness, he's there. He gets the pervasiveness of this. He's already given a State of the Union in which he said, transgender children, we see you, and something about the image of God. I remember very specifically. He said that children have the right to live their lives in the image of God or some such thing, as though God has a hand in this. I've seen some children's hospital posts. Like a friend of mine sent me some posts from a couple of different children's hospitals in which they talk about clergy at the hospital to counsel families as they bring their young people into transition. They have clergy on hand to help oversee the process. You can call this whatever you want. This is not of God. This is not of Scripture. This is not of faith. There's nothing our Creator would have to do with this. And I don't care what branch of Christianity or Judaism you are. The God Jews and Christians worship and the Word of God as written in our book, there is nothing of this that is sanctioned in any way. I don't care how you contort and twist yourself. It doesn't exist. So you can call this whatever you like, this LGBTQ plus month. You can call it whatever you like. It is not of God. Leave God out of this. But this is what I've been writing about at the Harum Society. Sorry, cheap plug, but it's true. It's important. Last couple of posts, Wednesday and Friday, I've talked about this. Cultural Marxism, taking out faith, family, and the free market. Those are the three. Cultural Marxism is eroding those three. Faith, family, free markets. Those are the enemy. They are coming hardcore at the church. They're coming hardcore at faith. How Biden has navigated the LGBTQ issues as the Catholic. How long is the Pope going to be allowed to run around the globe, do you suppose, and say he opposes gay unions? And that, I forget, he said something kind of nuanced on homosexuality itself not too long ago, it seems. I think it was something to the effect of not sanctioning it, but obviously being loving toward individual. But I still know, as far as I can remember, this Pope has still not fully embraced homosexuality or gay marriage. Not yet. I'm not sure how far off that'll be. But I'm wondering. Go ahead.
No, sorry. His latest was in January. You're right. He had to clarify. He reaffirmed that homosexuality is not a crime. Any sexual act outside of marriage is a sin, in a written response to a request for clarification. So that was the latest with the Pope, is that he reaffirmed homosexuality is not a crime.
Not a crime.
Yeah.
Meaning still a sin?
Mm-hmm.
Not a crime.
Yeah.
How long is he going to be allowed to even say that?
Not much longer.
So I want you to be aware, folks, if you're still out there and you value your faith, whatever it may be. I mean, at present, the Methodist Church they're right there in the middle right now of a huge fracture over this very issue. So Catholicism, I don't know. Can you crack the Catholic Church, do you think? Do you think you could see the Catholic faith actually break over this?
Outside of individuals, I haven't seen it yet. Thankfully, my local pastor is awesome. Philadelphia seems pretty strong. They haven't been able to break things locally. Far from a few outsiders and professors here and there, not as a whole.
I just, again, we are, and there was a whole sermon on this for me yesterday, so I'm very mindful of it, and I'm trying so hard to be better about this, that you can still behave honorably. Even in the face of hatred and disdain. Doesn't mean you have to lay down. It doesn't mean you have to be a doormat. I actually heard a great sermon on this turn the other cheek thing. Does not actually mean be a doormat and not defend yourself. But in as much as it is something under your control, living with one another peaceably, in as much as you can control it. And that's the difference. In as much as you can. The Bible says, in as much as you control the dynamic, live at peace. Hear the difference? In as much as you can control it. That is not to say that when people come and start shoving and poking and harassing and attacking you, I mean, Christians have always been hated. Jews have always been hated. That's nothing new. People of faith have always been hated, but that doesn't mean you can't defend yourself. It doesn't mean you ought not fight. You do have an obligation to stand for the word of God. You do. But you try to do it gently. You try to do it in love. And in as much as it is something you can control, you try to live at peace with people. But clearly, as I've written and as I'm saying to you, and the reason I'm bringing this up today is it's so obvious to me this month, unlike even in past years, this feels like foot on the gas pedal coming at you. That school board member in my community just sort of reminded me of this. It amped me up in a way I wanted to come in and talk about it today. Then I saw this Hill headline. They're coming squarely for you now. It's not just hanging the rainbow flag off the flagpole or hanging the banner on the business or the signature in their email. It's something new and it's something more aggressive. It's now name-calling and provocation. And they're coming squarely at we people of faith. And so I think we should all be eyes wide open about this. Our churches are splitting over this. This is a massive cultural moment yet again in this country. Marxists on the march, attempting to undermine and erode families and people of faith and communities of faith. You should understand that and be very eyes wide open about it. This isn't cute. This isn't just about, well, we should just, the Wilson's son is gay and we need to be kind. No, that ship has sailed. That's not what this is. This is straight out of pit of hell stuff. I mean, again, you get clergy at children's hospitals counseling parents about how to transition their young children who aren't even 10, as if that's something that can even be done. Anyway, sorry. I don't know that Pride Month was necessarily where I wanted to start this morning, but it was on my mind, so I felt I had to. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years now. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell them about him, Bob.
Yeah, it's really a thrill for me to have both the dentists, my daughter and Dr. Jared Geddes. One of the things that I love about them both is when they don't have a patient in their chair, they're in my room watching what I do and trying to learn from me. And we hear enough about the new generation and they think they know everything and they don't want to work. And I've got two dentists who are really, really want to learn and really, really willing to learn, to work hard. And I enjoy learning from them. They brought some new skills and some new technologies to our office that will be great benefits to our patients. And so if anything, I think that having them both there is going to expand and lengthen my career as opposed to shorten my career.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Last night, Town Hall, Nycki Hayley. Are you feeling the Nycki Hayley fever yet? I don't know. CNN. She's trying to separate herself from Trump and DeSantis. I saw her go after DeSantis in a clip last night, actually. I didn't watch this myself, but I saw it pop up where she actually, her criticism of DeSantis was something to the effect of, he appointed a lot of Disney people to state boards and commissions, but when they started to hassle him, he used taxpayer dollars to. Her argument was something to the effect of, I couldn't quite follow it. He's using tax dollars to go to war with Disney. I was governor and I didn't use tax dollars. I sat down with people that I didn't like and we worked it out without using taxpayer dollars or some such thing. Anyway, I don't know. You want to hear a little of this? I mean, I want to be fair. I know there are some people who are Nycki Hayley enthusiasts in the audience. Anything of interest to you, Fast Eddie?
When she explains about abortion, I think it's an interesting explanation, I think.
Okay, because this is one I've asked. Who's the Republican? Never mind Trump, DeSantis, Tim Scott, Nycki Hayley, I brought her up. Who's the Republican that's going to be able to talk about abortion post Roe versus Wade? All right, so she tackles that. Let's listen.
This is a personal issue for every woman and man in America, and it should be treated with the respect that way. So now that the unelected justices are out there and it's back in the hands of the people of the states, which is where it should be, there are some states that have become more pro-life, and I welcome that. And there's some states that have been more on the abortion side. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's what happened. The question that everybody is talking about is there a federal role for this? And I think that there is a federal role for this. But if we're going to do that, you have to be honest with the American people of what it takes to do that. In order to pass anything, you have to have a majority of the House, you have to have 60 Senate votes, and you have to have a signature of a president. We haven't had 60 pro-life senators in over 100 years. We might have 45. So if you look at it from that standpoint, don't let anyone in the media, don't let any political party tell you that a Republican president can ban abortion laws in our country, because they can't any more than a Democrat president can ban our state laws. So what can we do with consensus? That's exactly what it is. We come through with consensus and say, what can we all agree on? I think we can all agree on banning late-term abortions. I think we can all agree on encouraging adoptions and making sure those foster kids feel more love, not less. I think we can agree on doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them. I think we can agree on the fact that contraception should be accessible. And I think we can all come together and say any woman that has an abortion shouldn't be jailed or given the death penalty. Can't we start there? Can't we start there? Because what the politicos and what the media have done is they've made you demonize the situation when it's so personal that we have to humanize the situation. Our goal should always be, how do we save as many babies as we can and support as many mothers in that process as we do it?
Pretty good. Of course, all due respect to the ambassador or the former governor, no, we cannot all agree, obviously, anymore. We cannot agree that late-term abortions are something we should avoid. We can't agree on that, I'm sorry to say. You have political colleagues who are perfectly comfortable with quite literally voting against a law in the House this year that said if a baby survives an abortion, by law, you must engage to help save the life of that child. Democrats would not vote to support that law. A baby born alive must not be legally protected by medical professionals. I mean, Democrat Governor Ralph Northam, one of your fellow governors, Governor Hayley, once said, if a baby survives an abortion, make the baby comfortable before you kill it on the delivery room table. They openly talk. No, so there is no, sadly, I mean, I know what she's saying and I appreciate what she's trying to do. There's not even agreement on those basic tenets anymore. But it's interesting. It was an interesting tact she took. Do I think there should be a federal role on abortion? I do. But what she basically said is, we'll never get there. So don't worry. Will that work? I do think there should be a federal law, but we'll never get there, so don't sweat it. Does that satiate the crazy abortion-loving left?
It doesn't, Chris, but it's a very important point. This is a point that I make to leftists, made to leftists when we could still have conversations. It's a great point.
Well, of course, here's what's also problematic for the left is they daydream of executive authority and executive power. That's what they want for their own leadership. So they just assume that when conservatives take office, that's what they'll do. They'll just come for them the same way they daydream about going around Congress and using executive action and executive authority to come after them. Because that's what politics has become in this country. Executive actions, not legislative. And so, I don't know. I don't think hard leftists in this country trust Nycki Hayley or anybody else that says, don't sweat it. You need 60 votes in the Senate. We haven't had that in over 100 years. I appreciate it. It's a teaching moment, and she's using it as a teaching moment, but how much do they believe her? I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting answer. It's a thoughtful answer. It's a good one. Okay, let me tell you, MyPillow has been absolutely outstanding to sleep on these last few weeks. The new MyPillow 2.0, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I sleep like a baby. Between the Giza Dream Sheets I'm sleeping on, the MyPillow body pillow that I keep tucked in between my knees and on my arm every night, between that and the MyPillow 2.0, this brilliant new pillow with the heat-dissipating fabric that keeps the pillow smooth and cool to the touch the whole night, tremendous. I love it. Even Dean now loves his MyPillow dog bed so much, he spends most of his time sleeping on it in the office. You go to MyPillow.com today, and you use my name, Chris Podcast. That's the promo code, Chris Podcast. When you do that, you save up to 66% on everything on the website, whether it's the slippers or the towels or the pillows or the anything. But on the pillow specifically, the MyPillow 2.0, you'll get a free MyPillow 2.0 when you order one if you use my name, Chris Podcast, as the promo code. So you can call them, you can go online. Either way, use the name Chris Podcast, and know this, that everything you buy at MyPillow.com comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. These are American-made products, every bit of it, American-made. And they are proud of what they stand behind as a product, and I can tell you they're really well-made quality products. So look, are they the cheapest products? Of course they're not. People get mad sometimes because they think the price point is a little higher. I understand. I mean, like, no pressure. I'm not telling you got to go buy it, but I'm just telling you, you get what you pay for. So MyPillow products are really high quality, and they're made here in the country, and they're guaranteed to last. So, you know, you can buy something cheaper that'll fall apart on you, and you'll have to buy it again and spend equal amounts of money, or buy a really quality American-made product right now at MyPillow.com and save using my name, Chris Podcast, or call MyPillow today if you'd rather. 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056. Get to a couple of other pieces of information. They are aghast at Newt Gingrich out there. Newt Gingrich was on Mornings with Maria, or Sunday Morning Futures, I think specifically is what this is called. Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business. She hosts this show over the weekend, and the subject came up about Republicans in the next election and can they win. Nycki Hayley of the Trafalgar Group was also with Newt. They were discussing polling, metrics, measuring outcomes. Can a Republican win again? And then election integrity came up, and there are, like, mainstream media generally likes Newt because Newt's pretty measured. Even if they don't agree with his politics, they don't. It's rare that you get some media outlet hyperventilating about something Newt said, because Newt's really sharp. But Newt just weighed into it, folks. He just did it. He pulled the pin. We're supposed to have him this week, by the way. We expect to talk with him on Thursday, and we'll ask him more about this. But media is freaking out because Newt is out there winking at the idea there might be some chicanery in ballot counting. Listen.
I want to ask you about election integrity. How much do you factor in potential voter fraud when you come up with your polling?
Well, what we're having to do is look back at the last few years and come up with the number of votes that seem to come in that are, kind of untraceable. People that tend to vote that you don't seem to be able to contact. And so you build a model based on how many of these are going to happen. And unfortunately, in this day and age, when you have to build that model, what you have to do is they're all going to vote one way. But you have to figure out how many people are going to participate who, are just not going to be available for you to call. The 95-year-old guy in the news who doesn't watch the news or anything, who has a ballot request in his name and doesn't know there's an election. He's going to vote, and we know how he's going to vote now.
Okay. Newt, are the Republicans doing enough to ensure a free and fair election in 2024?
Well, I think it's probably almost impossible under current law to ensure an accurate election. And I think the only Republican strategy in the long run is to pick issues and win by margins so big that they can't steal it. If you have a very close election, Democrats have a passion for stealing them. And you look at the way they've used bundling. As Robert just pointed out, when you have the local union, which takes care of people in a nursing home, going in to vote the people who literally don't cognitively know what they're doing, you know that that union is going to vote every single one of them for a Democrat, no matter what their personal beliefs were. And so I think these are things you got to be honest about. And we're gradually, in the Republican states, beginning to tighten up the election law. But in states dominated by Democrats, like New York, Illinois, California, you just have to assume that the machine will steal as much as it can.
Wow.
Oh, wow, says Marie. I can't believe Newt Gingrich. He's just lost his mind. That's it. That's it. Newt cannot be trusted anymore. He was once considered a dean of conservative politics, but that's it. That's a bridge too far. How dare Newt, is the media take from that clip yesterday. We got to win by margins so big. We got to pick issues as Republicans that are so big as winners, they can't cheat because they have a passion for stealing. And there's nothing we're ever going to be able to do about it, said Newt. So we got to pick issues that win us margins so big, even when they cheat and steal, they can't overcome our margin of victory. Question, are there issues like that exist in this coming election, do you believe? Fast Eddie.
I think, me personally, yes. I think there are a lot of them.
Which do you like?
The economy.
Yeah.
Inflation. The cost of gas.
Now, let me ask you this, because I'm going to swerve into something that is going to interest you a lot. You might remember that I told you that I was going to be spending some time with DeSantis-affiliated people over the weekend, and I did. And I got some very interesting insight from the DeSantis people. And it affirms what I sensed was coming. I didn't know any of this prior to this conversation, but I'd kind of picked up on it, and I'd asked you about it, and I'd mulled this over in my mind. Is this really what I'm sensing? Is this really where we're going? Remember when I asked you, do you get the sense that somehow DeSantis is going to tack to the right of Trump and almost make Trump look like some kind of centrist or moderate? Remember when I started mulling that over? Like, is that what we're watching? DeSantis is becoming the culture guy, and Trump seems to maybe not be in that conversation. Remember?
I remember that, yep.
And I wondered aloud, is that going to work? Is that what's going on? It's exactly what's going on. Because I explain Washington to the people and the people to Washington, as Chuck Todd said. Just having a little fun. Having a little fun. But that's exactly what they're doing. I saw it, and that is what they're doing. Folks, they're polling Trumpists. This Team DeSantis is polling Trumpists. And they're going around, and here's what's happening, Fast Eddie. They're saying, hey, you're a big Trump enthusiast. Damn right. Yeah. I'm all in. I'm Trump all the way. And then they go, okay, what do you think about transgender bathrooms and, men playing against women in sports? Outrageous. Don't like it. Hate it. Don't want it. How's DeSantis handled that? Oh, he's great. He's the best. He's awesome. How about Trump? Well, he's against it. And they push a little harder. Is he? Can you specifically talk about what he's done or what he said or? That's what they're getting. So hardcore Trumpers are finding themselves unable to really speak to evidence that exists that Trump is, and by the way, it's not just on this, school closures during COVID. Remember? Do you remember how many times I begged? And I'm just being fair here, folks. Don't get mad at me if you're a Trumper. You know how I feel about Trump. I've said to you, I think the guy's taken more slings and arrows and been more sandbagged than any man in political American history, in modern American history. So, and his presidency speaks for itself. He was a very effective president. So, voted for him twice. Eagerly support him again if he gets the nomination. But I have to be honest with you, when we talked about things like reopening schools, Now, he did, to be fair, when I asked him very specifically about kids getting the shot, he said, I am not for mandating kids get that shot. He always said that. I have tape of him saying that on this show. So from that perspective, he was never for kids getting the shot. But when it came to stuff like, seriously, I'm asking you, Fast Eddie, do you have any recall of Trump ever saying anything about school closures, kids being allowed back in school? He might have, but I don't remember. How about transgender bathrooms? Drag time story hour? Has Trump weighed in on any of that to your memory?
Not off the top of my head.
Me either. And I have a pretty good memory on this stuff. He hasn't. It's not Trump's wheelhouse, folks. And so I'm not, look, that's not a criticism. Here's just what's real. And let me just get you ready for what I learned is coming. Here's what Team DeSantis has figured out. They're going culture. They're going hardcore culture, and they are going to try to tack to the right of Trump. And they're going to say, DeSantis is the guy that made school choice happen. DeSantis is the guy that's protecting your kids. DeSantis is the guy that's stopping gender mutilation, genital mutilation and hormone, chemical castration and all that crap on kids. DeSantis is the one stopping that. Woke, CRT, blah, blah, blah. He's stopping all that. He's fighting that. He has the receipts to prove he did it. Trump? What did Trump do? And people go, So, therein lies my question. Newt says, we need issues that we win by such big margins, you can't cheat. Is that it? Is that the secret sauce? Is that how DeSantis not only wins the Republican nomination, perhaps, but is that going to hold up in the general versus Biden if DeSantis is successful?
It was a winner in blue Virginia for Youngkin. Right?
Yeah, sure. Sure it was. Now, when I asked you, what's a big issue that can convince huge margins of people to vote Republican, you didn't say that, though. What was your answer? Your answer was economy. Now, when it comes to that, and by the way, that's not an incorrect answer. That was a perfectly acceptable and correct answer, but a different answer. It is different. Hear me? It is different. Now, you can be both, and DeSantis has a great economic track record, but so does Trump. And this is where the people that I was talking to about DeSantis, they had to admit, when it comes to economic issues, it's a push. It's a push. Yeah, he has a great economic story to tell in Florida, but so does Trump. And so the only thing that DeSantis can do to differentiate himself from Trump, really, other than the personality stuff, which, look, you either hate his personality or you love it. You're either tired of him or you're not. But DeSantis' calling card to try to differentiate himself in this primary is, I'm the culture warrior. But I say, here's big caveat. While I am 100% supportive of that, and I love that about DeSantis, I'm not convinced this country has an appetite for that, and I think Trump is not convinced this country writ large has an appetite for it. I'm not convinced. I'm not saying we shouldn't have the fight. I'm not saying it's not important and worthy of having. I'm just saying when it's the rabid American organized left versus us, and if our standard bearer is DeSantis talking about the culture stuff, how you feel about that now? Versus Trump talking economy and staying away from that. How you feel about it now? As a strategy.
As a strategy, I mean, it seems like the viable strategy.
Trickier, yes. Isn't it? It's tricky. Mm-hmm. This gets trickier. Do you talk economy? If you get the nomination, do you talk economy or do you go culture? Do you talk families, protecting kids, or not? I would. I'd like to see it, but does it work? Can it work? Or does it gin up the rabid radical leftists again? The abortion stuff, like Nycki Hayley trying to answer that last night. Look, I don't know the answer. I'm just talking this out because that's where their heads are. And I thought you'd be interested to know. Hey, we bring in our buddy, ombudsman of all things media, contributor at Fox News and The Hill, Joe Concha. Mr. Concha, good to kick off a Monday with you. Hello.
Chris, how are you? I actually moved on from The Hill, believe it or not. I'm with The Messenger now.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
Startup. Oh, yeah. So it's a great site, themessenger.com. Please do visit if you like. News down the middle and then opinions from all sides. Go figure. It's a novel concept.
I much prefer that. Well, congratulations. I'm glad to hear that. Sorry about the misstatement there. May I ask you quickly about something I thought interesting? Because you're a communication specialist, you'll find it, I think, interesting too. Nycki Hayley did a town hall with Jake Tapper last night, and the issue of abortion came up. And I've been wondering to myself how any Republican, be it Trump, DeSantis, Haley, Scott, anybody else, how they're going to deal with this post-Roe versus Wade thing where everybody is focused all the time on abortion. And Nycki Hayley said, hey, listen, it's going to take 60 votes. We haven't had 60 votes on an issue like this in 100 years. So basically, rest assured, it's unlikely it ever gets to me. I'm all for federal action on abortion, but it's never going to happen. You need to, basically, she did a civics lesson on how laws happen. But Tapper stayed with her on this for a minute, and I wanted to play this exchange, and then you tell me if this works.
Just over a week ago, your successor and former lieutenant governor in South Carolina signed a bill to ban nearly all abortions after 6 weeks in South Carolina. You say that you would support a federal ban in theory, but there aren't the 60 votes because there isn't a national consensus.
I think we have to say, where are they all going to come together? What can we get 60 votes on and then go forward?
So do you have an opinion, though? I mean, if a 6-week ban theoretically came to your desk, would you sign it?
But why? I will answer that when you ask Kamala and Biden if they would agree to 37 weeks, 38 weeks, 39 weeks. Then I'll answer your question. No one asked them that. No one asked them how late they're willing to go. What I'm saying is, why go and put the American people through that? Why do that? Why not talk about what's the truth? And the truth is, where can we get 60 votes? I just gave you the consensus about where I think we can come together.
Okay, so does that work? I find that an interesting new tack. Nobody has done that yet, to my knowledge. I'm not answering that until you ask them about their extreme positions on late-term abortion. Does that work, Joe?
It works, except, of course, they'll never be asked about their position on late-term abortions, right? I mean, if Biden does a town hall on CNN, which will never happen again, I'm sure, or Kamala, for that matter, who's never done one press conference since she not only ran for president but has been vice president, they're not going to be asked a question because they don't take questions.
Yeah.
So, but let's say they were, I'm sure that it would be with Kamala basically – Thousand Island word salad answer where you don't understand what the answer is. And with Biden, he would just go to extreme MAGA Republicans, XYZ, and fill in the blank. So it's a valid argument, though, because maybe 6 weeks for a lot of Americans is too soon. 37 weeks is absolutely too late. So where's the middle? And I think that's what Nycki Hayley was saying. And that's why if Trump wasn't in this race, she would be a formidable candidate, just like Tim Scott would, just like Ron DeSantis. But as long as Trump is there, I just don't see a path for Nycki Hayley because where is she going to peel the votes off from? The Trump base is so loyal, as loyal as we've ever seen in history. And then she's got all these other contenders that are in. It's like 2016 all over again, all the attention on Trump. Everybody else is fighting for our oxygen in terms of getting some coverage. And that's why you'll see Tim Scott on The View today, which will be a complete and total ambush. They'll paint the first black senator elected by Republicans in the South is a racist, but he'll go on there because he knows at least he'll get attention, just like that's why Nycki Hayley went on CNN last night, because all these people are just looking to get any sort of momentum, and it's so difficult as long as a guy named Donald Trump is in the race.
I wonder if, I guess if nothing else, did Nycki Hayley just give a blueprint? I've not heard DeSantis approach this way. I don't know that I've heard him asked this way yet, though. Trump certainly not. Like, I wonder if that's the blueprint to answer going forward. I'm not going to talk about it until you ask them about killing babies after they've survived abortions. Like, I think that's a great pivot, actually. I don't know if it works.
If I were advising, Chris, if I were advising, I absolutely would say, go with that answer. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you say, it's up to the states. I mean, I don't look, the whole point of the Supreme Court ruling on this was to allow voters to decide in individual states, right? So if you don't like it, vote against it, right? Vote against people that support that. And then we saw in places like Kansas that they didn't like that particular law, and that's a deep red state, right? So I think just saying that you'd be for a federal ban on abortions after X, that goes against everything that Supreme Court decision is about. And I think states' rights is more of a conservative position, and federalizing things like voting, that's more of a Democratic position. So I don't know. I don't like also when all these Republican candidates are asked hypotheticals that will never see the light of day, but Democrats never get that.
Right. Joe Concha with us from Fox News and his brand new book, newest book, Come On Man, The Truth About Joe Biden's Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Presidency. I guess newest, not brand new. But
Joe, it was out last year. I'm already working on number 2.
Are you really? Wow. You never
Yeah,
stop.
it's called Not Your Daddy's Donkeys. Yeah, Not Your Daddy's Donkeys. How the media drove Democrats to go insane. And basically, it's about how, let's put it this way, John F. Kennedy was for cutting taxes and a strong military, and was all about what you could do for your country instead of your country giving you everything. That's now the exact opposite of what Democrats are. Jimmy Carter was pro-life. I mean, can you imagine having a Democratic president pro-life? Impossible. Bill Clinton made Donald Trump look like a wallflower when it came to immigration, right? And deportation. So did Barack Obama, for that matter. He was the deporter-in-chief, you may recall. So it's just where the Democratic Party was. It was for the little guy, or at least they said they were, and now they're the party of elites, and that's because the media has driven them to this point. So I think it'll be a pretty good book, and it'll be out in October, I believe.
If memory serves, I'm going somewhere with this, so if you're like, why are you asking me that? There's a reason. Are you Catholic, Joe?
Yeah,
I thought you were. I ask that only because here's the headline from The Hill, and I snorted out loud. I nearly spit my coffee out of my mouth. How Biden has navigated LGBTQ issues as a Catholic president. Much like his handling of abortion before it erupted after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, Biden can appear to be uncomfortable at times with matters that contradict his faith.
He has no faith. All right. If you have faith, that means, what's the old saying? Principles aren't applied only when convenient. In other words, if you have faith and you truly are a Catholic, therefore you would be anti-abortion, right? And he just obviously is not that, because that's what is politically expedient for him. And in writing my first book that you mentioned before, in researching Joe Biden and the way he's conducted himself throughout his entire life, there is no guiding principle. Right? I mean, this was a guy who was completely and totally for a border wall as recently as 2008 when he was running for president then. And now, of course, he's against it because he's told to, right?
Yes.
And on abortion, he sees the polls shift a little bit, so now he is suddenly not pro-life, but he's pro-choice, if you want to call it that. And I could go down the litany of things that Joe Biden has shifted on or switched on or has plagiarized, for that matter. He just does what keeps him politically alive, and it has nothing to do with some sort of guiding principle. Say what you will about Donald Trump, right? Mostly on most issues, abortion not being one of them, because he also was pro-choice at one point. But on most issues, at least, you know what you're getting, and it's probably authentic because he never wavers on positions, even when it's not convenient. So that's going to be the contrast. If that ends up being the rematch that nobody wants, apparently.
A moment of silence, if you please. I know you are taking this very difficult news hard. We all are. Let's see. Where'd I go? Number 9 here, if you please. This is
number 9.
Yeah, quietly. Everyone hang their heads for a moment.
Welcome back. I have a personal announcement. While today is not my final show, this is going to be my final summer here at Meet the Press. It's been an amazing, nearly decade-long run. I'm really proud of what this team and I have built over the last decade, and frankly, the last 15-plus years that I've been here at NBC, which also includes my time as political director. I've loved so much of this job, helping to explain America to Washington and explain Washington to America. When I took over Meet the Press, it was a Sunday show that had a lot of people questioning whether it could still have a place in the modern media space. Well, I think we've answered that question and then some.
Okay, Joe. Thanks to Chuck Todd, he saved a franchise that was spiraling out of control while the late Tim Russert ran it. Thank God Chuck Todd to the rescue and saved that dump of a show.
Chris, this is why people not only not trust the media, but loathe the media. The pious condescension, utter egomaniac that is Chuck Todd, that statement completely and totally underscores everything you need to know about this person, about what that show has become. And the fact that I don't think he mentioned Russert anywhere in that screen. Russert, right, I consider in modern times, I'm not going to go back to, Murrow or anybody like that or Cronkite, but in modern times, Tim Russert was the best interviewer of political figures that you will ever see because he held both sides accountable.
Yes, he did.
Amazing. Again, what a concept, right?
Yes.
And he didn't do it with the gotcha snark or playing to a crowd on social media. He just asked really good questions. And the way he asked good questions was he would literally just play a soundbite from a politician, and they all flip-flop, and say, this is what you said a year ago. Now this is where you stand. Why is that? And that would be it.
Yep.
So he saved, Chuck Todd did, of all people, from journalism destroying itself. Oh,
he explained. I love that he explained America to Washington and explained Washington to America.
To America. This is how you should think, right? This is how things really work. No, you didn't. You were hostile towards Republicans. You were hospitable towards Democrats. That's it. And that's why you're the NBC political director. Look at their coverage and the way they go about things. So now in the span of 2 years, Chuck Todd has lost his Meet the Press job on MSNBC because remember they had Meet the Press Daily.
Yes.
And now, not age. It's not like he's retiring because he's old and can't do it anymore. I have a feeling he was asked to leave. I mean, why would you, at this point of your career, leave a job like that on a show like that? That's the longest running show in American television history. You don't leave unless you're asked to, but that part wasn't mentioned.
By the way, I don't know that we've talked since they announced at CNN after the Trump town hall, right after the Trump town hall. It was almost like the soft launch. They moved Caitlin Collins off the morning show and give her the primetime slot.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that move?
I mean, Caitlin, Chris, Caitlin is a good White House reporter. Yeah. Okay, I know she's on CNN. I'm not supposed to praise CNN. I'm on Fox. No, I would watch her and be like, all right, she seems fair. And I thought she did a pretty good job. Then they move her to mornings where you need personality in the morning. You know that. You're a morning show host. And there is a personality deficit with Caitlin Collins because she's a reporter, right? And everybody focused on Don Lemon, and I always thought, boy, that's a weird sign. Why would they move her there? And now they're going to put her at 9 o'clock? Oh. I can guarantee you, please have me back in 6 months, right? And we'll talk about how the 9 o'clock on CNN is doing just as poorly as it was before she got there. Because, again, it's a personality-driven time. I'm sorry.
Maybe it's their strategy to
chairs at that station.
Yeah, I know. Is it like network Ambien? Maybe for those of you who have trouble sleeping, tune in. Maybe that's I don't know. That's a strategy.
Yeah, it would help. But Chris, look, he's in. How much time do we have left?
Oh, we're all you want.
Oh, good. Okay. There's hard breaks. Just so the audience is listening. Hard break means we got to get out, or else the commercial's going to play whether we like it or not. When CNN hired Chris Lick, and people are like, that's a great hire. Boy, he'll make CNN fair again. I go, no, this was the guy who's the showrunner for Stephen Colbert. You watch that show? I mean, it's like Meet the Press at night. Just Democrats on all the time. Used to be like, tonight, George Clooney and Julia Roberts. Now it's like, tonight, Bernie Sanders and AOC. It's like, what? That's a late night show? That's where I'm getting my entertainment? Oh,
it's just the worst.
Yeah, and what has he done? He moved Don Lemon to mornings, right? Speaking of egomaniacs, said, okay, Don, you've been on in primetime, the lowest rated primetime host of all the networks. We're gonna give you one more hour of airtime, and because your ego can completely handle this, we're gonna put 2 women with you. When we saw how that worked out, right? Now it's like, okay, we're gonna take Caitlin Collins out of mornings. We're gonna put her at 9 o'clock. No. You need a fresh face there. The problem is a lot of these executives are so risk-averse,
yes,
right, that they just want to go with people that the audience knows. Well, Tucker Carlson was languishing on Fox and Friends Weekend, literally falling asleep on that couch when suddenly Greta Van Susteren left Fox, and then they needed someone to fill in for her at 7 o'clock, and they kind of almost stumbled upon him and then realized, oh my God, look at the talent that we have here.
Yes.
Right? Maybe just take some chances with some people and see how it works out. Like Megyn Kelly, who never, ever worked in journalism, right? She was a lawyer, and she sent a tape to Roger Ailes, and Roger said, you know what, that's a talent. We should really sign her. No one would have done that unless they saw talent there. So I think we got to get back to more like watching tapes of people, listening to people, and saying this person could be something. Let's take a chance. You take a chance, you'll be in great shape. Jesse Waters on Fox, look at him. The guy was a producer, then a man on the street interviewer, and now he's number 2 in cable news, right? So take a chance and see how it goes, and it might work out. Gutfeld, same thing. The editor of Men's Health, and now he's like the king of late night.
Yeah.
Come on, just take chances. You'll be fine.
Well, and to your point, on MSNBC, on Morning Joe, I look up and they've rolled. I didn't even know. I didn't know he was allowed back. I guess there's like a moratorium on gropiness or whatever. Like Chris Matthews has been rolled back out again. His old bones are back to contribute to Morning Joe in the morning. Chris, I thought he was wasn't he part of the whole gropey grabby era? I thought, or no? Am I misremembering?
It was a flimsy allegation.
Yeah.
Like he said some things to a girl like in the makeup room, like how like pretty she looked or something.
Yeah.
Like kind of like an old school thing that you would do. I think he was trying to be complimentary. I'm no one defending Chris Matthews. I don't believe he deserved to lose a show over and his career over for that matter.
Right.
But sure, they'll bring him back. And as you can see, no one's really is that upset about it. Look, if MSNBC was smart, I can't believe I'm going to say this. You take back Keith Olbermann and you put him in primetime.
Oh.
As unhinged as he is, the flavor that he provides, which is he is so far left and so angry, right? Which happens when you're in your 60s singles and never had kids, right? You put him in primetime and he will rate. He will rate well because that's what the MSNBC audience wants at this point. Somebody like him is completely unapologetic, doesn't have to be accurate necessarily, and put him back on. And then I think that wouldn't be the worst move in the world. But they'll never do it because he's been fired like 18 times and nobody likes him.
Very quickly, kind of outside the news realm, but, media personality, well known anyway. The Sunday NFL Countdown host, Sam Ponder, facing backlash simply because she, thinks women ought to compete against women in women's sports and keep women's sports fair. It's interesting because she's a big name to the extent that ESPN has big names. She matters, and she's a woman, so it's not like she's a typical white, straight Christian guy. I mean, they're kind of caught, aren't they, with the women? As Sage Steele, same thing, who happens to be a black woman, who I think is suing ESPN right now. I find ESPN kind of interesting here because they can't give her the heave-ho quite as easily, can they?
In my book, I have a whole chapter on sports media, how it's somehow to the left of the aforementioned MSNBC. I mean, that's where we're at this point. And for common sense people like Sam Ponder, right? She's married to the former Vikings quarterback, Christian Ponder, and she's been there for several years. I would think it would be a benign statement to say that women should compete against women. I'm standing up for women, and I'm standing up for fairness, right? Because when you look at Leah Thomas, right, you see these pictures of her on the medal stand, and she has legs like Saquon Barkley, all right? And you know that if you're a swimmer on the collegiate level and you look over and you see this guy who is ranked 339th in the country is suddenly number one, a national championship champion, you look down, you see that person competing against you. You already know before you even hit the water, you're going to lose. Right? Yep. Because that person is bigger and stronger. The reason why steroids are banned from professional sports because it gives you a chemical advantage, right? And that's the same thing with men against women. And that's all that Sam Ponder was saying. And now she's getting attacked by USA Today columnists saying that she's a bigot for making that argument. I thought that Democrats stood up for women and loved Title IX and loved fairness and women should be treated equally, right? Instead, no, that's not what's happening here. And Sage Steele is suing ESPN because they made her get the vaccine because they're Disney-owned, and that's the corporate policy. I always thought it was, my body, my choice. So if I don't want something and I want to put something in my body, right, then I don't want that. And that's what's happening here. So Sage Steele and Sam Ponder, they're the last of the Mohicans as far as women at ESPN actually standing up for something that they believe is fair or just, and this is the way they're being treated by the rest of media, and it's an absolute joke. I'll leave you with this one story. Grant Napier, right? He was the play-by-play guy for the Sacramento Kings, and he was asked on Twitter by an NBA player, DeMarcus Cousins, what do you think about Black Lives Matter? And he responded, DeMarcus, I come from a school that says all lives matter. He was fired within 5 minutes. He's never worked again. Can you imagine this? That's how insane we've become in sports media.
I began to realize, it was during the draft this year, if it weren't for the NFL and if ESPN loses the NFL, ESPN ceases to exist, I think, right? I mean, like if they lose the exclusivity or the corner on the NFL and certain broad. Like if they didn't have it, they'd be nothing. I don't think anymore.
They've become, look, you used to go there and I would watch SportsCenter religiously, like when I was in college, because that was the only way you could get scores and games and highlights. Now you get them on your phone at anywhere you want at any time. So the highlight thing is gone.
Yep.
They've come down to being a debate show and Stephen A. Smith being on for like 7 hours a day, right? Debating about sports. And if I see it again, who's better, LeBron or Michael? I'm going to throw myself out a window. All right, I can't watch that debate again. So, by the way, for anybody listening, Michael went to the finals 6 times and won all 6 times and never had to go to a game 7. LeBron keeps going to finals or playoffs and keeps losing. Right? I know he's won a couple here and there, but please stop with this argument. All right, better defender, better scorer, better leader, better everything. Michael Jordan against LeBron James. And I don't know why we have to keep having this conversation on ESPN over and over again, but they keep doing it. So that's a lot of their programming. And you're right. Without the NFL, then they have the NHL, which doesn't rate well nationally, and the NBA, which I bet you we're going to hear that Nuggets Heat is probably the lowest rated final of all time. Yeah, you're right. The NFL basically keeps ESPN afloat.
Joe Concha, come on, man. The truth about Joe Biden's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad presidency. Already out and was a bestseller soon to come this fall. Not Your Daddy's Donkey. Going to be another bestseller, and you can catch him regularly on Fox News. And when it comes out, I hope you'll come back. I hope you'll come back well before that. But Joe Concha, thank you for starting the week with us.
I'm so coming on and begging people to buy the book again. That's what you do when you write a book. You beg people to buy it. It's a horrible existence.
Chuck Todd may be calling you about that. He may be begging you to write a book with him, maybe.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.